Ladies, gentlemen, and arisen of all ages, with the launch of Dragons Dogma 2 on the horizon in just a few days, I thought it would be a good idea and a good time to sit down and talk to you all about what you can do to be best prepared for the game's release. The things that you can do already right now if you're just chomping at the bit to get into the experience. The first thing is probably a bit obvious, but get going in the character creator that has been released. This game promises the potential of a vast and engaging open world for you to fully explore, with the potential to spend dozens if not hundreds of hours in it if you want to actually fully experience it. As a result, you probably want to spend a good bit of time putting the appropriate detail into creating your character itself and even your main pawn. After all, the longer that you have to look at them, which will be quite a while with this game, the more specific you maybe want to be when you're actually putting them together. If you had to wait until release to do this, spending extra time in the character creation would obviously delay you and slow you down from getting to play the actual game itself a bit longer, which obviously is something that could happen to you if this is a normal game, but understanding this situation and seeing the opportunity for a bit of solid marketing, Capcom released the character creator itself for Dragons Dogma 2 exclusively, not only early, but for free as well, so you can download it as a standalone product. Create your main character, create your pawn, maybe some secondary monstrosities just for fun because of the depth of the character creator, with an incredible amount of detail on the actual faces. And in doing so, you can save them to be loaded instantly when you launch the game itself on release if you want to use them, letting you get right into the thick of it in as thin a time as possible. Aside from the physical preparation of getting your character ready itself, then, there is also the mental preparation, which is the fact that this game is of course a sequel, and there is Dragons Dogma 1 that you can play right now, which breeds two questions as well. The first being, do you need to have played the first game to be able to follow along in the second? And the answer to that is not at all really. The devs themselves confirmed that the story of the second game takes place in a sort of parallel world to the first game. For those who didn't play it, part of the lore of the world is that the pawns, which are the player's loyal followers, all basically come from alternate realms, alternate worlds, and they are teleported in via riftstones. In theory, this is one such parallel world, and the second game takes place in a whole different one that apparently also has pawns, which in itself almost seems, this being logically from what we know, you will be told all of the relevant information quite early on, so you can follow along without just thinking of it like a sequel. But if you want to, of course, have a preparatory guide on the story so far and what we know for the second game, I am of course here to offer you a refresher. In this game, as in the first one, we will be playing an Arisen. This is a character that is chosen by a legendary dragon whose heart is actively removed from their body with its claw, thus entering a sort of contract that gives us the ability to come back to life upon death, thus Arisen. Through the first game, there are plenty of endings, but the one that is generally thought to be canonical is that the player, after being chosen by the dragon, becomes an adventurer worthy of slaying the dragon. Once the dragon has been slain, the Arisen's journey is complete, and they can even become a seneschal, which is an extraordinarily powerful being with control over life and death, essentially, left with the responsibility of essentially just guarding the world for years. But this power is so powerful that it also drains their life, ending in their inevitable death. Upon reaching this state, it is realized a new seneschal must be found, and so a new Arisen must be found and pushed to rise to the occasion. And to find this Arisen, the dragon is brought back to life by the very one who killed it, and is tasked to find a replacement once more, repeating this cycle, the quote-unquote cyclical ending. The way this land has persisted for thousands of years, periods of peace under the seneschal, periods of unrest until a new Arisen is actually strong enough to rise up. By the end of the first game, this is pretty much all known knowledge, and so going into the second game, they could play off of the sort of meta-knowledge that players are expected to have of the world around it, as now we aren't blind going in, but we actually understand the concept behind it all. We theoretically have the whole first game behind us at this point. That said, let's leave that behind now and talk about the story bits that we know for this game, specifically Dragons Dogma 2. Because it's taking place in a parallel world means that the only general overarching lore of the first game is even applicable really to the story of this one. As for the things that we know for certain then, we know that we will once again be an Arisen, of course, but also that there will be a false Arisen touted by a queen who is trying to keep her power. This fake Arisen does seem to have some control over pawns somehow, though the reason is uncertain, as typically that is a power that only a proper Arisen will actually have. Past this, we know the world of this second game is split between two main kingdoms, each acting as a sort of nation, one being Vermund, the human kingdom where Disa reigns with her fake Arisen, and the other being Batal, the home of the cat-like lion people that are new to this game, which not only are just an extra race that will exist within the world, but are also playable and pickable for both player and pawn. Batal is their kingdom, their land, separate to Vermund, and they have different philosophies entirely between the lands, where Vermund welcomes the pawns, trusts them, and actually actively worships the Arisen, making them their actual leader. Batal thinks that the pawns are a reason for the suffering of people in general, and in theory, these different ideals between these two kingdoms will be a significant source of stress between them, and the story itself is lining up to be a sort of political mystery in a fantasy world, teetering on a balance that will likely topple just in time for us to show up and find ourselves in the middle of it all. Not to mention there is this sort of hidden third faction, which is the elves, who have their own sort of location that isn't really known to everyone else, that they keep to themselves completely within, and they have their own nation as well, their own hidden kingdom, that they don't really take part in the political intrigue between the other two factions, or at least they haven't until now, until the setting of the game. Overall, it's really quite exciting, and I'm really looking forward to diving face first into it as soon as I can. The only other real thing that you can do to prepare past making your character visually and your pawn, and then either brushing up on your lore of the first game or actually playing it if you're really itching for some of that Dragons Dogma feel before the release of the sequel, the next step is just working out which vocation you're actually going to want to play. As we not only have a host of returning vocations, there are also some new ones too, with the particularly special new arrivals being Trickster, an illusion magic type class that promises from the devs themselves to be a lot more about actual intentional intelligent play from the player themselves, inviting you to try and literally trick the game's AI from the enemies, able to do things like create false patches of ground or false bridges over high drops to try and make the enemies think it's real, walk onto it, and fall as a result, killing them instantly, or even create something like an illusion of a dragon to frighten and lock up even the most otherwise terrifying normal foe. The idea of the Trickster is not to do lots of damage in itself, but to enable and buff the party around them and allow them to do the brunt of the actual killing part. It's essentially a support, or even a tank honestly, designed around how much you are willing to mess with the game through illusory magic and the NPCs, which is conceptually just extremely awesome for an RPG, especially one that is pretty much single player. Another is the Mystic Spearhand vocation, and this just looks like a really engaging mix of a magic user and a proper melee weapon user. They get a unique weapon no other class can use, which is a double-sided spear that doubles up to cast the spells themselves. And again, this one just seems really cool to me, and it definitely does fill a bit of a hole in the game's vocation list of a good melee slash magic mixed user. The final one of particular note is Wayfarer, and essentially what we know about this is that it will be the sort of jack of all trades. You will be able to learn parts of every single vocation. We don't know how extensively you'll be able to do so, or alternatively how limiting it might be to be able to do that, but the trailer that they gave it shows the potential of switching from pure magic to magic arrows to the Mystic Spearhand spear to a greatsword, so it does seem relatively inclusive and actually viable to use multiple different things overall with this. As for those, and honestly even with the other vocations, we are putting out more detailed guides on many of these, some of which are already out, some coming out over the coming days, to give you a much more proper picture of each vocation in the game individually to help you actually choose the one that's right for you. Personally, I am torn in so many different directions, but thankfully a really cool thing about this game is that it doesn't make it too hard to switch vocations if you want to try other ones, and so you are allowed to be uncertain, even until you start playing and even deep into your journey, honestly. And then that just about does it then, everyone. Just everything that you can do or know really to prepare ahead of the release of Dragons Dogma 2 on the 22nd of the month in just a few days. Are you ready to sink all of your free time into it? Because I know that I sure as hell am. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world our stage. Goodbye.